Alright guys, we're going to take a look at a couple things tonight. The first thing I'm going to look at though is the VT 510 BF. This is the VariTube 510 bottom feeding connector that is going to be, I guess, competing with the Fat Daddy bottom feeding connector. There's a couple problems with it. Let's get to the first one. There's a couple cool things about it too, but in order to get to the first problem that I ran into with it, I got to get you to the second problem. Let's go ahead and detach. Well, it's not going to do it right now. Let's try this again. Yeah, there we go. Let's go ahead and detach this atomizer. And perhaps you can see what's happening here. Notice how this post here is getting shorter and shorter as I detach it. I don't want to go too far here. But if you can look and see, the 510 connector is actually coming off of the mod. So let's screw it back down to get the 510 connector back in place. And now we're going to hold that little post in place while we unscrew. And that's going to go ahead and remove the atomizer. Now for some reason, the way they have this set up, and the best I can say is they probably should have reverse threaded this. I've actually tightened the connecting nut up here to no avail. It just seems to be, with some of your atomizers that are a little tighter when you screw them in, it's going to back off the top portion of the 510 connector. I don't know why that is, but that's what it's doing with mine. They probably should have reverse threaded the post that this nut screws onto, and that would have taken care of the problem, because when you screw it all the way down, if you over tighten it, then it would start to back out, and you could just loosen the atomizer, which would tighten the base again. But for whatever reason, they didn't do it that way. Now, where's it at? Here it is. Here's the second problem. The first problem I ran into, actually. This is the Quicksilver. It's not technically a squonking atomizer, but I had it modified to be a squonking atomizer. So we got it screwed down tight. Nothing. So let's back it off. This is interesting. Now this one's backing off the pin as well. Okay, let's back it off. And vapors. Now, why is that? I don't know. I can't see any reason inside of the device why it will work slightly backed off, why it won't work all the way down. But for some reason it won't. But let's do this, see if you can see. As we back this off, I want you to watch these two nuts with the wire soldered in between them. And you'll notice that that is raising up inside the mod as I remove the atomizer. That gets to the cool thing about this 510 connector. Basically, this whole center post is a solid post. So unlike with the Fat Daddy where it's two parts and a spring has to carry part of the electrical load, this is a solid post all the way through. So the post is carrying the current, not the spring. Probably if you're building a mechanical mod, that's going to give you a much better connection. But let's go back to the Tsunami. First, here's the top of your 510 connector. I do like that better than the Fat Daddy. It's flat, it's lower profile, it just looks better. I guess if you were making a box mod out of a plastic type, a Delrin, that kind of material, you might have problems because this probably does not disperse the heat as well as a Fat Daddy. But for most applications, this would probably work for you. And again, if it's a mechanical mod, you're probably going to get a lot less voltage drop, being as that center post is a solid piece. Let me give you a close-up of what I'm talking about with that. Here's another problem that I've picked up with this VariTube 510. I want you to look here. Let me try to unscrew the atomizer, and look what's happening. Okay, inside the 510 connector, it's unscrewing, and if you look at this, I'm actually not unscrewing the atomizer. I'm unscrewing the base of the 510 connector from the mod, and that's why you see this piece on the inside moving up as I unscrew it. It's actually taking the 510 apart instead of removing the atomizer. As you can see there, I now got a gap in the mod. Now I can screw this back down to where the atomizer, to where the 510 connector is now flush. Okay? But in order to remove the atomizer, I have to reach in here and get a grip on the 510, and now I can unscrew the atomizer without unscrewing the 510 connector. But in order to do that, I have to hold on to that. Now, it doesn't happen with all atomizers. This is the Geek Vape Tsunami 24, the new version of it. Alright, let me get it back under here and screw this back down. And you can see I actually like the way this works here. If you watch, the spring loaded. On a Fat Daddy connector, you won't see any movement down in underneath because the spring loaded part is up in the top. But this whole thing, and this is what they mean when they say that the spring isn't carrying any of the current, notice the spring on the inside is actually moving the entire post down. So I like the way they did that. But your the top of your 510 connector should not come apart from the mod as you're unscrewing an atomizer. It just shouldn't, and it appears to do it with this VariTube 510 connector. So basically, those are the two problems that I've run into with this 510 connector. It is what it is. There's really no perfect solution to a problem. If I were using this, if this were a mechanical squawker, which it isn't, but if it were mechanical, I would probably prefer the VariTube 510. Being as it's regulated, and if I'm getting voltage drop, I can just turn up the power. I'm only vaping this at 85 watts. So I can just really turn up the power and make the whole problem go away. So I'd probably prefer the Fat Daddy over the VariTech, but the difference is really marginal. They both work. And I know there's a lot of people that hate the Fat Daddy and they call them crap. And I know that there's some type of feuding going on between VariTube and Fat Daddy. I don't want to get in the middle of all that. I've had no problems out of the Fat Daddy connectors that I've used. I've had some problems out of this one. It does seem to be a better quality material, though. I will say that. And for whatever reason, Fat Daddy still puts that airflow in from the bottom, those channels that, you know, if you're using some old Ego type thing that gets its airflow from the bottom, or a dual coil cardomizer, that kind of thing, I guess you need them. Who's really using that kind of stuff anymore? So this is a, you know, it's a decent 510 connector. It works. It squonks. It does the job. If you're a modder, you're probably going to want to pick one up to try it out. But if you're already using the Fat Daddies, in my opinion, they're just as good. Again, unless you're building a mechanical, then you might want the lower voltage drop. But I just wanted to show that. I know it's kind of new out there. Not that new, but it's kind of new. The VT 510BF. You can pick them up over at VariTube's website. They are what they are. I didn't build this mod myself. I had a friend build it for me. He used this one, and it's working for me. It does the job. anyhow, if you want any more information or put your own thoughts in or have some questions to ask about it, you can see me over at the SmokeyandTheBandwidth.com forum. We'll have a thread up about this thing.